That was some beautiful music.
Amen.
Sometimes we all need a reminder of this. Stand, hold fast. Shall we have a word of prayer before we get started? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, come near to us this morning and give the things that we need at this moment. Lord, you said that when 2 or 3 are gathered together, I'm with you. Lord, pour your Spirit upon each one of us so we can discern what you're trying to teach us. Lord, take a coal from your altar and touch my lips and permit me to speak. Lord, let thy will be done. In Jesus' precious name. How many of us took a walk down a beach along the water shore and let our toes and feet sink into the sand? You know what good feeling that feels like?
Yeah.
How many of you, as you're walking along, looked around, see if you can find some objects in the water, shore, in the sand? How many of you looked for the perfect rock? Or it could be a shell. But in this case, a perfect rock. And what do we usually do with a rock when we're along the water?
Skip it.
We throw it. So in order to find that perfect rock, it has to be what? Flat and smooth. Because the flatter and smoother it is, it just skips across the water. My sermon this morning is called Fitted Stones. And the story we're going to look at this morning is the story of David. And we see in 1 Samuel chapter 16 that he was anointed by Samuel the prophet among his own brothers for a special service for God. David went through training in the wilderness as a shepherd. And we know he represents the true shepherd. To be fit for this position, and as I look at the story of David and Goliath, I saw the great controversy and the struggle between Christ and Satan. As I was reading in the book of early writings, page 69, these words jumped out of the page at me. The Lord has shown me that a great work must be done for his people before they can stand in the battle of the day of the Lord. That reminded me of the story of David and Goliath. Because it is a battle. Let us all turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17. And we're going to look first in verse 1 and 2 and 3. Then we're going to jump to 17 to 29. The battle lines are drawn. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together. And the Philistines stood on one mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. So can you imagine these big armies? They're just building up to this battle. But let's look behind the scene, what's actually taking place in this moment. Let's look at this with fresh eyes, because how many of you heard this story as a child and throughout your adult life? Most of you? Let's look at verse 17. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now of thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how the brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shouted for the battle. So here David, his dad says, hey, go take some provisions to the army, because can you imagine these guys are down in these trenches ready for war. They're fighting this battle. And David came there and jumped off the carriage and went directly to the men. And he ran and saluted his brethren, and he talked with them. Behold, there came up a champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, and out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard him. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him, and were sore afraid. Can you imagine this big giant mocking them, egging them on, saying, send a man to me, let's fight, let's start this war. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel he's come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth them, the king will enrich him with great riches, and give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. He's talking to David here. Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And this is his brother that just brought him food in the trenches. Why hast thou come down hither, and with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thy heart. For thou art come down, that thou might seest the battle. Can you imagine this? David is standing up and speaking to the men and finding out what's going on. And his brother comes and attacks him, says, why are you here? I know your heart. You didn't come here to fight. You came here to watch the battle. Right here was David's first victory. It came when his brother provoked him. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be taking care of the sheep? He might have given him a sharp response, but instead, calmly he said, what did I do now? Is there a cause? In verse 29. Such a character is not born in a moment. By ignoring the opportunity of entering into insignificant argument, it was over just standing there. Have you ever been in a confrontation where it doesn't really matter? David showed himself a master of his own spirit. Only thus can a man become a true leader and a guide of others. Let's continue. Let's go to verse 31. And David said to Saul, let's go back 31 here a second. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. So everybody was talking about David, saying, who is this shepherd boy that's coming here between us? And so Saul heard this, and Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, a child. And he a man of war from his youth. And David said to Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and bear, and took the lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. He took the lamb out of the mouth and slew these animals. And when he rose against me, I caught him by the beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing that he defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Oh, that's amazing. King of Israel, the man that's supposed to be the leader. They're all cowardly. They're in their trenches. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and assailed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. So here's the second test. The second victory David won, when he was escorted into the presence of Saul with all his commanding personality, had refrained from combat with Goliath, how could David attempt it? Saul planted seeds of doubt in David's mind and tempted him to wear his armor. But again, with polite humbleness, David won the victory over doubt by adhering to his heavenly inspired purpose of maintaining faith. Faith and total dependence on the Lord. Let's continue. Verse 40. And he took his staff in his hand, and he chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook. He took his staff and smooth stones with him. And he put them in his bag, even in his script, and the sling was in his hand. He drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near to David, and the man bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy, which he had a reddish appearance to his face, and of fair countenance. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog? Can you imagine a young boy and a man of war? That thou comest me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh to the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field. Have we heard any of that in Revelation? And then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord. The Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. In this day the Lord will deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee and take thee thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, but the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Not by might, not by power, but by my spirit. And it came to pass, when the Philistine rose and came and drew nigh to meet David, David hasted and ran towards the army to meet the Philistine. Did he have faith? Yes. And David put his sling, put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. So here we come to the third victory. His third victory was over the Philistine, who was the very personification of blasphemy. It was a victory of spiritual forces over material brute strength. A simple stone from the brook, plus the lad's skill and his confiding trust in the eternal God, gave the Israelites a lesson that they were never to forget. David represents Jesus Christ. And what did he take to the battle? A stone. So what is it about this stone? Well, let's take a couple of verses that explains what stones represent in the Bible. First, let's go to Matthew chapter 3, verse 9. And think not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you that God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. These are living stones. 1 Peter 2, 1 through 5. Wherefore lay aside all malice and all guile and all hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings. As newborn babies desire the sincere milk of the word, that they may grow thereby. If so, be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious. Because they were in the word. To whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God, and precious. Ye also as living stones are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices accepted to God by Jesus Christ. Aren't we supposed to show praises to God? We are the royal priests. I like how it's put in Malachi chapter 3, 2 and 3. But who may abide in the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi. And purge them as gold and silver, that they should offer the Lord an offering in righteousness. So who is God purifying? The Levites. So why is it the Levites? Because they handle the things of God. They are doing God's work. By giving an offering in righteousness, they're laying their lives down for the service of God. 1 Peter 4:12 and 13, it says, Beloved, think not a strange thing concerning the fire trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing has happened to you, but rejoice insomuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. In Ministering of Healing, page 504, it says, Ever before him Christ saw the result of his submission. His earthly, so full of toil and self-sacrifice, was cheered by the thought that he would not have all these troubles for nothing. By giving his life for the life of men, he would restore into humanity the image of God. He would lift us up from the dust and reshape the character after the pattern of his own character, and make our character beautiful with his own glory. Revelation 17:14. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. I love that about the Bible. It always tells us the victory before the battle. For he is Lords of lords and kings of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So, there are 3 steps to have the mind of Christ. And where is character formed? It's formed in the mind. And I use this Bible verse because called and chosen and faithful are just like the 3 processes. Steps to have the mind of Christ. Have you ever want the mind of Christ? We should all want the mind of Christ. Number 1, commit to the process. Call. When we commit to the process, do we commit? Say, I'll commit a little bit over here. Maybe I'll be over here. Or do we jump head first into the process? That's what God is looking for. Faithful followers that are willing to sacrifice their own interests. Number 2, learning under trying circumstances. The chosen. At one point in my life, the same day, I attacked at every angle, blindsided. And the same day, I had a storm come in and wiped my whole crop out. And before that, I cried to God. I says, I don't know what's happening. And the devil hit me again. When we accept the call and we jump, plan on for the attack. Plan on to be refined by the refining fire. Because God wants to do something special in our lives. Number 3, automatically and overlearning. When I think about that, I had to look at that closely and carefully. The faithful. Automatically and overlearning. We can't recognize something that happens in our life until it comes right at us, right? And we say, oh, shoot, I failed right there. So next time it happens, we see it again. We pick up on it quicker, don't we? When we overlearn, we recognize what's about to take place before it happens. That's what our mind has to do about sin. Christ says he'll give us the victory over sin. Do you believe that?
Amen.
He will give us the victory. But do we believe it? Do we live it? That's the question. So by overlearning, it comes naturally. To love will be natural for us. To live to bless others as natural as breathing. Do you have to think about breathing? Shouldn't be that the same way where, oh my gosh, I don't want to sin. It should become natural. We should recognize it when it shows up at the door. And where does it show up? In the mind first. That's where the sin begins. In closing, I want to read something that impressed me so much, and I hope it impressed you. It's found in 3 Manuscript Releases 231. The first tabernacle built according to God's directions was indeed blessed of him. And he's talking about Solomon's temple. The people thus were preparing themselves to worship in the temple not made with hands. A temple in the heavens. And we have to get this mentality in our mind and think about this. Because we can go all over. The stones of the temple built by Solomon were all prepared at the quarry and then brought to the temple site. How many of you knew that? Did you all know that? I didn't catch on that. I thought they usually bring the stones and cut them at the site. But it's all prepared at the quarry. But not only the stones. They came together without sound of axe or hammer. The timbers were also fitted in the forest. The furniture likewise was brought into the house, all prepared for use. So what were they all prepared for? Use. Even so, the mighty cleaver of truth has taken out a people from the quarry of the world and is fitting this people who profess to be the children of God. So what is it about children? What is it about David as a youth? I had this experience one time. I went with a pastor to this person's house, and they just moved, and they had a couple kids, and we're sitting on the floor, and the pastor was talking and sharing some stuff in the Bible. And as I watched these 2 kids, as his hands moved, as his mouth was speaking, they were just soaking it in. When we're come to Jesus as a child, we say, here I am. Send me. Who profess to be the children of God for a place in his heavenly temple. We want the cleaver of truth to do its work for us. We are taken from the quarry of the world. The material must not be a dead substance, but living souls. Living souls. And these souls must be brought out of the quarry of the world, where the hand of God can fit them for the temple in heaven. So this is holy service, right? For the temple in heaven. We are here as probationers, and we must pass under the hand of God. All rough edges and rough surfaces must be removed. We must be stones fitted for the building in heaven, God's temple. When I think about God's hand fitting us, I think of the clay and the potter, shaping us, molding us, shaping us the way he wants us. We are brought into church capacity defects of character, but we must not retain them. We must be fitted and squared for the building. We must be laborers together with God, for we are God's husbandry. We are God's building. In view of this, we must see that our temples is not defiled with sin. We should be lively stones, not dead ones, but lively ones that will reflect the image of Christ. We must be worshipers in spirit and in truth. It is not enough to be brought in as worshipers, but the heart must be brought into the harmony with God's plans. We must be spiritual worshipers. If we are to represent Christ, we must be living stones, built up a spiritual house. Participate for the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Brothers and sisters, this is not an easy walk that we all undertook. But Christ revealed that to us from the very beginning. We must participate in the sufferings of Christ. Just think about that for a minute. The anguish that he experienced. The things that he said, those are my people. Forgive them, Lord. They don't know what they're doing. Those are my brothers and sisters. God wants to use us for this last work. But we can't be used unless we are fitted for the building. That's why we're Seventh-day Adventists with this message. Because he's entrusted us with this message to go and grab those lambs out of the mouth of the lion. Are we ready for that work? It's going to take courage. But God says he will never forsake us and leave us. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, you're an amazing God. Lord, you revealed your plan from the very beginning. Lord, ourselves have gotten in the way. Our own selfish interests. Lord, teach us to be like you. That we can overcome like you overcame. Thank you for giving us that demonstration. Lord, we just want to be with you. And we want to be faithful